This video will critique the last part of the book of Exodus, from chapters 32 through 40. In the last video, we left Moses up in the mountain, taking notes from Yahweh on the interior design of the tabernacle. Meanwhile, the people of Israel get restless and ask Aaron to make them a god to go ahead of them. Aaron asks for gold earrings and makes out of them a golden calf. When he has finished building an altar in front of the calf, he says there is going to be a festival for Yahweh the next day. Then the next day, the people put sacrifices in front of the calf, have a feast, and proceed to make merry. Yahweh tells Moses what the people are doing, and he is furious. Moses pleads for him to not kill the people. Then Moses gets to hear of what Aaron and the people have done for himself and gets pretty angry too. He smashes the stone tablets he has carried down the mountain. Next, Moses burns the golden calf and grinds it into a fine powder and makes the Israelites drink it. Then he asks Aaron why he took part, and Aaron makes the excuse that the people would have killed him if he hadn't, and that he simply melted the gold and out came the calf. Then Moses goes to the gate of the camp and tells the people who are on Yahweh's side to join with him, and all the Levites gather around and proceed to kill 3,000 men at the command of Moses. Then Yahweh sends a plague for the people. Outside the camp, Moses puts together the tabernacle. Once Moses was finished with this tabernacle, a pillar of cloud appeared in front of the tent whenever Moses would go up there, and Moses would speak to this cloud as though face to face with a friend. Pretty much all of chapter 32 and part of chapter 33 comes from the Elohist source. In this story, the Levites are shown to be loyal followers of Yahweh, and Aaron is made to look like the one responsible for not keeping the Israelites in line and allowing polytheism to take hold. The same sentiment towards Aaron is reflected in Deuteronomy, but not in the Yahwist or priestly source. Interestingly, only one golden calf was made, but Aaron says, quote, "Here are your gods that brought you out of Egypt," end quote. And then he makes an altar in front of the calf and pronounces to the people that they will have a festival for Yahweh, specifically Yahweh, the next day. During that day, the people bring offerings in front of the calf. The calf, or bull, was also symbolic of the main Canaanite deity El, whose name had many variations, including El Shaddai, El Elyon, among others. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28, King Jeroboam of the kingdom of Israel made 2 gold calves and erected them in Bethel and Dan. He told the people, quote, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, that brought you up out of the land of Egypt." The latter part of that statement is almost the exact same thing Aaron said to the Israelites at the mountain, suggesting a strong connection between the two events that's more than mere literary repetition. It's thought by scholars that the calves, supposedly made by Jeroboam, were the seat on the throne on which Yahweh sat, sort of like the cherubs in the temple in Jerusalem. They weren't really meant to be idols, but undoubtedly the writer of this narrative saw them as idols to other gods. The incident with Jeroboam could have been a real event in which a guy came from Egypt and started ruling in what would later be called the Kingdom of Israel. The Levite priests were kept from officiating, and other men that are described as non-priests are allowed to officiate, which could have been the Aaronite priests. I was originally going to discuss the findings at an ancient Egyptian copper mine at El Kedem, and I'll still discuss it a little bit here. There was this mine that was under Egyptian control called Serebet El Kedem that was believed to have been founded by King Amenemhet III, who reigned from 1860 to about 1814 BC. And this mine was occupied off and on until the time of Ramses IV, who reigned during the middle of the 12th century BC. At this site, Proto-Cyanic script graffiti was discovered that bore some similarity to Egyptian hieratic script that was also a precursor to Phoenician and Hebrew. A temple of Hathor was discovered there too. The older part of the Hathor temple had been extended during the reigns of Queen Hatshepsut and Kings Thutmose III and Amenhotep III. Hathor is often portrayed in cow form and bore the epithet Nupt, which meant golden, and was honored with singing, dancing, as well as nudity at her festivals. It was thought that she gave birth to the sun god every morning in the form of a calf. It's possible some dim memory of an escape of some miners and/or priests from this site could have remained and been altered over time. Next, Moses requests to see the glory of Yahweh, but Yahweh puts him in a cleft in the rock and covers him when walking by, so only Yahweh's backside is seen. This contrasts somewhat with the earlier verse about Yahweh speaking with Moses face to face at the tabernacle in chapter 33, verse 11. There is some dispute about this particular passage. One source I found suggests it's from the Yahwist, and another claims that it was written by the Elohist. I tend to think it's the Elohist source or another source, because the stories from the Yahwist source in Genesis showed people talking with God face to face, as though he were an actual person. In chapter 34, Yahweh orders Moses to carve tablets of stone and go up into the mountain. While there, Yahweh concludes a covenant with Moses and orders the people to destroy the altars, sacred pillars, and sacred poles of the Canaanites, Amorites, Perizzites, and Jebusites, among others. Further, he gives orders for the people to not prostrate themselves before other gods, to not make molten idols of other gods, and to keep the festival of unfermented cakes. Yahweh repeats the rule that everything that opens the womb belongs to him, but he makes an exception for donkeys and humans, which does not appear in the earlier set of laws. This second set actually originates from the Yahwist source, while the previous set also mentioned first fruit and the firstborn belonging to Yahweh comes from the Elohist source. This change in language could point to a change in what people were allowed to sacrifice, which culminated in later priestly and Deuteronomistic writings. The Yahwist source seemed to copy a few of the laws of the Elohist and then made one or two edits to suit the writer's own ends, or to suit the changing culture at that particular time that the writer wrote the text. Then Yahweh gives another rule to observe the Sabbath, but no explanation is given for why. Then a rule is issued to observe the festival of weeks and of ingathering, to not slaughter the blood of sacrifice with leavened bread, and that the sacrifice of the festival of Passover should not stay over until the morning, and to not boil a kid in its mother's milk, which are all pretty much the same laws as what's found in the Elohist writings. Then Moses continues up on the mountain 40 days and nights and takes no food or water, which is an exaggeration at best. Then Moses comes down from the mountain, and his face shines and people are afraid to come near him. This part about the face emitting rays is generally thought by scholars to come from the priestly source. If Moses' face emitted rays because he spoke with God, then why not the previous times he was up on the mountain taking interior decoration instructions? Or why not the time when Moses spoke with God face to face in front of the tabernacle that he built after he received the decorating instructions? Anyway, Moses calls the people together and reiterates the rule about not breaking the Sabbath, and says that the people that do break it shall be put to death, which seems a little harsh compared to Sabbath rules in Exodus 23:12 and Exodus 34:21. Then he begins going into exacting detail about the interior decorating scheme Yahweh gave him. This and the carrying out of these instructions that Moses gives, supposedly from Yahweh, are what make up the remainder of the book of Exodus. So anyway, I'll try to keep this as brief as possible.
Moses tells the people to make contributions to the tabernacle, wool dyed reddish purple, fine linen, goat's hair, silver, gold, copper, cucus, scarlet material, ram skins, acacia wood, onyx stones, oils for anointing and illumination, and incense, among other things. He then instructs certain people to make the ark, the tent cloths for the tabernacle, the altars, the utensils, the priestly garments, and so on and so forth. And the people start to bring materials, and they keep contributing until it's decided that they have more than enough, and two men named Bezalel and Oholiab make the tent cloths. Bezalel makes the ark of acacia wood, and overlays it with pure gold, then the cherubs that go on top of the ark, and then he makes a table and utensils. Next, Bezalel makes the lampstand of pure gold, the altar of incense of acacia wood overlaid with pure gold, incense and holy anointing oil. After that, Bezalel makes the altar of burnt offerings out of acacia wood and overlays it with copper. The utensils for the altar are made out of copper, and then the courtyard is beams twisted, iron and bismuth. Then the workers start on priestly garments. The ephod, shoulder pieces, and girdle are made. Then they engrave onyx stones with the names of the children of Israel, and then the breastpiece with rows of semi-precious stones, one for each tribe of Israel, is made. Next, the sleeveless coat of the ephod is made with a hem of pomegranate. And bells of pure gold are made and attached to the sleeveless coat. Next, the workers make robes of fine linen, turbans, ornamental headgears, and linen drawers. Finally, all the finished products are brought to Moses for his approval, and he blesses them. Then Yahweh gives more instructions for when to set up the tabernacle and clean it with Aaron and his sons, priests. Then the day comes, and Moses sets up the tabernacle as described, and Yahweh sends a cloud to fill the tabernacle, even though apparently Moses already built this tabernacle himself or another one.
This later instruction contradicts the earlier Elohist verse in which the tabernacle was already made. Once again, this later instruction and setup is from the priestly source, and I think it is from just before or during the Babylonian exile period, for the reasons I stated in the previous video, and also because the motivation for making such a long list of items would have been a greater necessity closer to the time of the exile, because by the time the book of Deuteronomy was written, the temple in Jerusalem was seen as the only legitimate place of worship. The individual items listed, I don't think, would have mattered as much if there were multiple places of worship at different sites, as there had been in earlier times. Another idea that I guess I could present is sort of a rebuttal to my ideas that all of the writings of the tabernacle contents were the result of the Babylonian captivity period, is that these items that were written about in great detail were written as a way to legitimize the contents of the temple in the time of the Deuteronomist, or just before, or something like that, because in the Elohist laws, there was that one instruction about the altar needing to be made out of ground without any stairs on it, and that was literally it. That was literally like the only altar setup that was allowed, apparently. But with the writings of the priestly source, you get the introduction of these new types of altars, and so I think especially like the placement of this writing is kind of telling, because basically it's Moses receiving these instructions directly from Yahweh. Therefore, that legitimizes that type of tabernacle and also temple setup with the temple that's built later. So again, that's another reason as a kind of rebuttal for all the reasons I gave before, for these instructions to have been written, say, just before or during the Babylonian exile period. So there we go. I just wanted to present that. So anyway, this concludes the book of Exodus. I hope you guys have enjoyed these videos so far. The first video for the book of Leviticus is on the way, about within a month or two. So cheers.